Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We know how vital water is.
Turn off the taps and let the lawn go brown. The BC government asks you to use less water as more of the province is enveloped by drought. Plus,
Started to realize this was more than just a simple fall from a cyclist, that this was something serious. There was a heavily cracked windshield.
a cycling celebration turns tragic after a person is killed and 2 others are hurt in the Okanagan. And the woman convicted of murdering a 14-year-old teenager in Victoria decades ago has her day parole revoked.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Well, get ready to put the hose down and take shorter showers. The BC government is urging you to save more water as more of this province is hit by drought. As Shivani Joshi reports, the push comes as crews battle more wildfires.
We know how vital water is.
And BC's water minister is asking you to save more of it, as 62% of the province is now experiencing level 2 or 3 drought conditions. Randy Neal says residential water usage can make up nearly 70% of local demand in the summer. Officials suggest watering lawns less and turning off taps when washing dishes or brushing your teeth.
We find that voluntary conservation use works incredibly well. So we know that when we ask people and start that education early to understand that if they do this on a voluntary basis, because they know it's the right thing to do to help prevent water scarcity in the summer.
Recent rainfall has helped the bone-dry northeast, but the southern region is getting more dangerous.
Drought is worsening in parts of the southern interior, like the Nicola, the Kettle, the Okanagan, and Slocan Lower Columbia basins as stream flows continue to decline in those areas.
And that is adding fuel to the flames. East of Princeton, the August Lake wildfire ignited over the weekend. An evacuation order that was in place has been downgraded to an alert. And south of Princeton, the Placer Creek fire continues to burn. Both are considered out of control.
We are seeing a cold front move through right now, so that is coming with a decent amount of precipitation for most areas in the Kamloops Fire Center. Rain doesn't necessarily put out fires all on its own, but it does help to dampen the fuels and kind of slow things down a little bit.
We are seeing that we're having success in suppression, which is a good sign in BC for mid-July.
Still, with weeks of hot and dry weather ahead, the province is asking everyone to save as much water as they can now. Shivani Joshi, CBC News, Vancouver.
Let's bring in our science and climate specialist, Darius Madavi, now with a look at the weather. And let's start with the smoke.
That's right. And I want to emphasize the fact that suppression efforts are working right now in mid-July in BC is quite a good sign for the fire season, and I have some more good news in a moment. But first, that smoke that we're seeing coming off, especially these fires in the south in the Similkameen region, spreading across parts of the south, especially into tomorrow. Expect to see a high amount of surface smoke throughout southern BC, as well as up in the northeast, where, as usual, a high amount of local smoke. Other than that, though, a lot of that smoke moving from the prairies out into eastern Canada. But again, Similkameen fires pushing a lot of that smoke over into the coastal regions as we get into tomorrow. So be aware of that. The good news that I promised, the fire danger rating has come down significantly today in parts of the south as well as the central interior. That is largely a result of the high amounts of precipitation, or decently high amounts of precipitation for July that we saw in those areas. If we take a look at the radar, you can see where we're seeing a lot of that rain. This is this is earlier today, but not the whole day. Some areas up here also got a fair amount of rain. We're also seeing a fair amount of lightning strikes down in the south where we had some of those severe thunderstorm watches. Also some rain coming to Vancouver and some lightning strikes up in the Alpine. But for the most part, Dan, we're drying out and getting sunnier over the next few days.
Okay, thanks very much, Darius.
Thank you.
A celebration of cycling in BC's southern interior turned tragic over the weekend. 1 person was killed and another 2 were injured during a 155-kilometer ride, which left from Skaha Lake Park in Penticton. As Chad Pawson explains, Mounties and race organizers are trying to piece together this tragedy.
Gran Fondo literally means big ride. They're a celebration of cycling, showcasing beautiful geography along local roads.
So wonderful. They're amazing events. Get together with people and enjoy the scenery, have the camaraderie of working together, but also trying to improve yourself. It's just an amazing experience. So it ties together all the things I love about cycling.
Jonathan Balog rode the Okanagan Grand Fondo Penticton, part of a team, but the good vibes at the race turned somber after a fatal accident along the course.
They did have volunteers there slowing us all down, helping us to walk past the event, the accident scene, and they had everything covered up. So it was at that point that we started to realize this was more than just a simple fall from a cyclist, that this was something serious. There was a heavily cracked windshield.
One person was killed and another two were injured here on White Lake Road near St. Andrews Drive. Police say the incident involved a motor vehicle on a hilly section of the course where the highway is 2 lanes. Organizers aren't saying much other than they're heartbroken over the tragedy. Our prayers are with those impacted, says a statement. We are fully cooperating with the authorities at this time. Penticton's mayor says everyone around the race is hurting and wants to know how this could happen.
So, and Grand Fondo is kind of like a big family, you know, with a lot of the riders that come back year after year. And so it's particularly tragic.
Around 2,000 riders participate in this event, which has been in Penticton since 2011. The city's mayor says it's well managed, well run, and has been safe. He's hoping on the RCMP investigation to determine what went wrong this year and what can be learned from it. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police are also trying to piece together the tragic death of a young child hit and killed by a vehicle in Surrey on Sunday night. Officers say it happened around 8 o'clock in the Newton area. They say the driver stayed at the scene and is cooperating with them. What led to this crash is unclear. First responders did try to save the child, but the injuries were too severe.
Our officers arrived, and police officers, along with BCEHS paramedics, began to administer life-saving medical intervention to the young child, but sadly the 3-year-old girl died.
The Surrey Police Collision Investigation Unit is now involved. Officers are asking anyone with information or dashcam footage to contact them. A man has now been arrested and released in connection with the stabbing death of a woman in Gastown. Vancouver police say 40-year-old Michelle Ivy Bell of Surrey was stabbed Sunday morning and later died in hospital. A 31-year-old man was taken into custody a short time later and has since been released as that investigation continues. Officers say they believe the suspect and victim did know each other. Canada's parole board has revoked day parole for the woman who killed Reena Virk in Victoria in 1997. Carrie Sim was known as Kelly Ellard when she was convicted of murdering the 14-year-old. As Jason Proctor tells us, the board ruled Sim represents an undue risk to society.
This goes back in part, most recently, to a drug test that she failed in January 2025, just a few months ago, where she tested positive for methamphetamine. She blamed that on medication she was taking, saying it was a false positive. But it also follows a series of failed drug tests. And essentially, what the parole board says, was that her reaction to being taken back into custody ended up being a very aggressive, screaming, kicking, kind of saying she didn't want to go back to federal prison. She's made some amends since returning, but essentially they say that she's sort of showed an ongoing pattern that shows she's not really dealing very well with being released into the community. Whether it's through aggression, whether it's through its failure to sort of accept, her sort of responsibility for this horrific crime that really shocked the nation, as you say, back in 1997 when it happened.
All right, Jason Proctor, thanks very much. A new report finds BC is now the worst performing province when it comes to access to affordable childcare spaces. 5 cities in our province top the list for most expensive median fees in the country. As Katie DeRosa explains, one Surrey mother says she feels the province seems to have abandoned its $10 a day childcare pledge.
For this Surrey mom, childcare for her 2-year-old and 6-year-old costs nearly $2,000 a month.
Astronomical, and honestly, nowhere close to the promised $10 a day daycare, which the NDP has been saying for years would be coming our way.
Lisa Kemp has spent years hunting for one of those coveted $10 a day spots.
I've found frustration and disappointment and an overall lack of care spaces in the city of Surrey.
That's because Surrey has a lower proportion of $10 a day sites compared to Vancouver and even compared to cities with a smaller population like Burnaby.
It makes me incredibly frustrated. I don't feel that other cities should have substantially more than Surrey has.
A new report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives finds that despite leading the way on affordable childcare 5 years ago, BC is now falling behind other provinces.
The worst performing province or territory in the entire country.
The report has found that BC has created a two-tier system, with 10% of parents receiving $10 a day childcare and others paying up to 5 times that.
We now have 6 provinces and territories that are at or below $10 a day for all spaces, not just for a few spaces in select cities.
Out of 35 major Canadian cities, 5 BC cities had the most expensive infant childcare fees. Topping the list was Richmond, with median fees of $46 per day, followed by Surrey, Vancouver, Burnaby, and Kelowna. The report finds that median childcare costs are lower in cities with fee caps imposed by the government. For example, 12 cities in Ontario have median daily fees of $22 a day due to a new fee cap imposed by Doug Ford's government. And in 5 cities in Quebec, parents are paying just under $10 a day.
Our provincial government not only has not lived up to its own promises, it's now moved BC from being a leader to being the back of the pack.
Childcare Minister Lisa Bear was not available for an interview, but her office says the report does not tell the full picture, leaving out a key subsidy for lower and middle income families, which has brought down childcare fees for more than 35,000 children. This Surrey mom would like to see BC adopt a similar fee cap model and level the playing field so that where you live doesn't determine how much you pay for childcare. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
More than 100 people have been displaced after a fire tore through their residential building in Surrey. The CBC's Saurabh Sandhu spoke with some of those forced out.
Dozens wait anxiously outside this apartment complex in Surrey to get an update on the future of their homes.
We don't have any idea because he said that there's a meeting tomorrow. Or maybe we go to hotel now.
The residents were forced out of their homes after a fire erupted in their apartment building Sunday evening.
When I turned my head down, then I saw like 4 units down my unit. Mine is the corner unit. Fire blaze, like it is already like picking up very fast from second floor, third floor. It's already reached third floor roof.
Surrey Fire Service says crews were called to the 4-story multi-residential building around 7 p.m. in the Guildford neighborhood.
Once we were on scene and we established what was going on here, we escalated this to a third alarm incident right away to get a significant more amount of resources on scene.
Firefighters say more than 4 dozen crews responded to the fire and remained on the scene till early Monday morning. No injuries were reported and residents of all 68 units were evacuated.
The fire was substantially controlled in about 90 minutes, and crews remained on scene for several more hours to extinguish hotspots and to assist residents with obtaining medications and animals that were left behind in the fire.
One floor, like almost like the entire section which is facing 101 is gone.
SIG says crews are working to determine the cause of the fire. Fire officials say the city is in touch with displaced residents to assist them with temporary accommodations. The latest incident comes on heels of a series of fires in the city, including a blaze at a townhouse complex in Newton and at an e-bike store in Whalley last month that also destroyed a not-for-profit grocery store. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Surrey.
Still ahead, BC Ferries' plan to build 4 new ships in China has caused a political tsunami. But some mayors in ferry-dependent communities say people don't care where the new vessels are built. That story is next.
When you think about British Columbia, what images come to mind? Is it a totem, a dogwood, a river, a mountain? What truly defines this province? It's time for a new bracket, the search for BC's best symbol. 5 weeks, 64 symbols, only one winner. And now we want to hear from you. Head to cbc.ca/bestsymbolbc to vote now.
The RCMP says a 30-year-old Armstrong man has been arrested after a hit-and-run crash that left 2 men dead. It happened early Saturday morning. Mounties say 2 full-size pickup trucks crashed head-on near Spalumcheen on Highway 97A, south of Armstrong. 2 of the 4 people in a tan Chevrolet were killed, a 19-year-old from Vernon and a 20-year-old from Coldstream. Witnesses say a black 2009 GMC Sierra with a lifted suspension was driving the wrong way. Police want to talk to other drivers who may have had near misses with that truck before the crash. They're also hoping for dashcam video. The decision by BC Ferries to have 4 of its new ships built in China has caused a political storm. Some politicians are calling for the contract to be scrapped. But as Katie DeRosa explains, local mayors say the criticism ignores the pressing needs of people in ferry-dependent communities.
BC Ferries' announcement that its 4 new ships will be built in China has made waves, the political tsunami reaching all the way to Ottawa. The Conservatives, both federally and in BC, say the deal should be scrapped entirely. But would ferry users support paying $1 billion more for a ferry built in Europe, since no Canadian companies bid, even if that means higher fares?
I'm always concerned about dollars and value for the dollar. Certainly I'd like it to go toward Canadian builders if it's possible. But I'm also torn between, the cost of the ferries.
They'd probably have to end up raising the cost of the trip over.
Ideally, I think they should be built here. Yeah. But I think they're playing catch up. I think there was a timing issue. We need those ferries now.
Some mayors in ferry-dependent communities say residents don't care where the new ships are built, as long as it results in more reliable service and affordable fares.
As ferry-dependent users, I think it's fair to say we need them. We don't really care now because we need them.
The procurement discussion is I think a little bit disconnected from the discourse that we're seeing, and I'm not sure how big of a deal it actually is, particularly if there isn't Canadian capacity to build those vessels.
Premier David Eby says BC Ferries is getting short shrift when it comes to federal cash for ferries compared to Atlantic Canada. BC Ferries received just over $35 million from Ottawa last year. Based on nearly 23 million passengers that year, that amounts to $1.50 per passenger. Compare that to Marine Atlantic, which received $192 million from the federal government while serving just under 400,000 passengers. That breaks down to over $500 per passenger. The Premier also pointing out that Marine Atlantic's newest ship was built in the same Chinese state-owned shipyard without similar backlash. A $1 billion loan to BC Ferries from the Canada Infrastructure Bank is now the subject of scrutiny from the House of Commons Transport Committee. It follows criticism from provincial and federal Conservatives who say the contract should be cancelled. But one UBC professor says that's simply not realistic.
The notion that ships to be operated by BC Ferries should be constructed in Canada is acting rather like Mr. Trump. We have fundamentally to accept that we can't do all things, and that we rely on a competitive process to use resources most efficiently for the benefit of consumers.
For these ferry users, the upgraded vessels, no matter where they're built, cannot come fast enough. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
The early afternoon at Manning Provincial Park, where cloudy skies as well as smoke were lingering in the area. There is a chance of rain in the park ahead of a warm, dry stretch. The full provincial forecast with Darius is coming up.
Wednesdays are officially the best day of the week this summer. CBC Musical Nooners have returned. Free concerts Wednesdays only. Head to cbc.ca/musicalnooners for all the details.
Younger Canadians have higher odds of spending more time in the sun and using less protective measures than any other age group across the country. Those are the findings in a study in the peer-reviewed journal BMG Public Health. The data highlights disparities in sun-safe behaviors across different age groups. It finds 18 to 29-year-olds are less likely to use physical protection like hats or pants and more likely to use tanning beds and burn. Amy Roswald spends her time educating people about sun safety. She's the Director of Marketing at Save Your Skin. Amy, first of all, thanks for being here. Any of that surprising to you?
No, I think we've always struggled to reach a younger demographic, and I think a big part of that is that the messaging we usually use about being sun safe just doesn't necessarily resonate with their priorities or their perceptions of risk. I think 29 or 18 to 29-year-olds just don't feel that vulnerable to skin cancer. It seems probably like something far off, like an older person's issue.
Before we get to some of those issues, tell us about some of the different messaging campaigns you have tried.
Well, May is melanoma month, so every year we really shift into high gear around that time. And this year we really wanted to focus on prevention, partly because of the crisis we're facing in primary care. And for dermatologists, at the moment, there's only 800 dermatologists for all 40 million Canadians. So while early detection is really important, just preventing skin cancer in the first place is really a top priority. So some of the ways we do that is we have an initiative called Shining a Light on Sun Safety that is specifically for children and caregivers, especially in schools, camps, daycares. And the idea is to kind of spark early awareness of sun safety and build lifelong sun safe habits that will become kind of part of their daily routine going on. We also partner with municipalities and provinces across the country to proclaim May as Melanoma Month and offer sun-safe resources to them and to share with their communities. And we offer free public sunscreen dispensers across the country. We have 5 in Vancouver this year with about a half a dozen more pending.
Beyond this study from BMG Public Health, have you seen other tangible evidence that younger people are not getting the sun safety messages and why you think that might be?
Absolutely. There's misinformation on social media. We've seen lots of myths about sunscreen, being harmful, myths about base tans on social media. So we try to debunk those myths. And also anecdotally, we see more younger people coming to our foundation. We see people in their 30s, young moms and dads with melanoma. We've even seen people in their mid-20s come to us with melanoma. So, we know that the sun damage they're accumulating over their childhood and their teen years does have really serious consequences.
We also know the study also shows lower income groups are using sunscreen less often. Is that something that you're hearing from the people that you chat with?
Certainly. We've, we all know how expensive everything has gotten. It's pretty rare to find a bottle of sunscreen for less than $12, $15, even more if you want something more kind of lightweight for your face. We've been approached by shelters for low-income communities asking for sunscreen donations, which we oblige whenever we have them. And that's one of the reasons that we do offer our free public sunscreen dispensers, because if you're on a fixed income and your priority is food and rent, then sunscreen does become a luxury.
Amy Roswald with Save Your Skin, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Still with health, BC Emergency Health Services says during the summer months, there is a surge in 911 calls for people at risk of having a life-threatening allergic reaction. But as Tanushi Bhatnagar reports, they say preparation and quick thinking can help you.
This is an EpiPen. It's used to treat anaphylaxis reactions. BC Emergency Health Services say they've treated over 600 cases this year, and in June alone, 145. They say if you know how to use one of these right, it can save your life.
They may be really nauseated and vomiting a lot. They may have swollen eyes, swollen lips. Sometimes people even feel that their throat is closing or that their tongue is swelling.
Some of the symptoms of anaphylaxis, a severe life-threatening allergic reaction. It can happen from anything, from certain food items, to medication, to insect bites and stings. And paramedics say they see a jump in cases every summer.
People are out at picnics, barbecues with friends, The bees and the wasps are out, so there's more prevalence of the possibility of having a severe allergic reaction to those things because of cross-contamination of food, etc.
Thwaites says an immediate shot of an EpiPen can relieve symptoms quickly.
Blue to the sky, orange to the thigh. Pop the blue cap off, and then you take the pen and put it right into the thigh muscle.
That has the largest muscle, and it's the middle of the thigh, sort of in between the knee and the hip.
Chan says EpiPens are a necessary but expensive life-saving device. Without insurance, one EpiPen can cost up to $120, but a prescription plan can help cover part of it.
90% of reactions are successfully treated with one dose of the EpiPen. And also, we shouldn't forget that these devices expire after 12 to 18 months.
Thwaites says it can either be self-administered or given by someone around you.
If you've never used one before and you're on the phone with one of our call takers, the directions are not only there, that they're going to be talking you through this on the telephone as well.
He says the expiry date of an EpiPen can be found on the side, and a window on the tube would show murky liquid instead of clear. Tanushri Bhatnagar, CBC News, Vancouver.
Rates of obesity have jumped sharply in Canada, and new research ties much of the rise to the COVID-19 pandemic. As Jennifer Lagrassa shows us, experts blame a mix of factors from isolation to disrupted routines.
In the early months of the pandemic, Angela Martin says cooking was her comfort. As a nurse, food helped her cope with the stress.
Social supports were away. You couldn't go to the gym, like where my social life was. So just didn't have anywhere to go or anything to do. And so it just kind of piled on slowly but surely.
While Martin has always struggled with obesity, she says the pandemic made her weight gain worse. And according to new research, she's not alone.
And we found that the rate of obesity was steadily increasing.
The study, published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, found that in 2023, 1/3, or 10.6 million Canadians, were considered obese, up about 8 percentage points since 2009. The study used body mass index, or BMI, which researchers recognize is an imperfect measure of health, but still allows them to spot trends. They found that during the pandemic, the rate of obesity nearly doubled.
Many different reasons have been hypothesized for this, such as increased sedentary behavior. Another main reason might be factors associated with mental health.
One expert who works with people struggling with obesity says isolation likely played a role.
People who are living with depression, their depression may have got even worse, and that's where we saw people having an increase in their weight.
The research also found that since 2009, obesity increased the most in young adults, and that more women became severely obese.
With the more severe rates of obesity, we're going to see more of the complications. So the complications end up being type 2 diabetes, osteoarthritis, coronary artery disease.
Since this data was collected, popular weight loss drugs have become more available in Canada, raising questions about whether that will impact the obesity rate. Jennifer Lagrassa, CBC News, Toronto.
The pressure is on for Russia to end its war on Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump announced he will sell billions of dollars in weapons to European countries. As Katie Nicholson reports, it comes as Trump appears to be growing impatient with the Russian president he once praised.
The announcement had been teased for days and signals a significant shift to President Trump on Russia. The agreement's simple. The U.S. will sell billions in weapons, which NATO will then help deploy throughout Ukraine, and which will, among other things, shore up air defenses. That includes what the president called top-of-the-line weapons, like the Patriot air defense batteries, munitions that should arrive in Kyiv within days. Donald Trump came into this second term in office on a wave of isolationism and pledging to end this particular conflict within 24 hours. As it has dragged on, he has in recent weeks grown visibly frustrated with Russian President Vladimir Putin, with whom he has always boasted about having a good relationship.
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. And I said, strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything.
To that end, Donald Trump has threatened what he called secondary tariffs at a rate of 100% against Russia if a peace deal is not reached in 50 days. It isn't exactly clear what Trump means by the secondary tariffs. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick did say that these would potentially be economic sanctions on countries buying materials from Russia, or it could also be a tariff. He called it just another tool in the toolbox. At the same time, for months now, there has been a bipartisan sanctions package in Congress waiting in the wings that would tariff countries that assist Russia at a rate of 500%. As for Ukraine, its leader, who months ago had perhaps one of the testiest relationships with the American president, and who had once been accused by the vice president of not saying thank you to Americans for past assistance, made his gratitude clear in a meeting with U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg.
We are thankful to President Trump for his all messages and very strong decisions about resuming delivers for us, and we are thankful for bipartisan support.
A message of thanks he repeated again in his nightly national address. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
More communities are on the move in Manitoba with more than 100 wildfires burning. The province is reeling from a summer of heat, smoke, and fear. The latest on the evacuation efforts after this. More than 120 wildfires are burning in Manitoba right now, forcing thousands of people to evacuate from 8 communities. As Karen Pauls tells us, residents of 3 First Nations in the province's Island Lake region have had to leave their homes to escape the flames.
With fires burning all around the Island Lake region, more than 1,500 people have been evacuated on military airlifts, joining others who left earlier on commercial flights, not knowing when they'll return.
Everybody's sort of on high alert, watching and monitoring the situation. And we certainly think of our neighboring community, Garden Hill, who's had the fire breach and is now in the community and threatening homes.
Garden Hill is one of 2 First Nations in the area with an airport. Neighboring communities have been sending residents there by boat.
My concern is the access points of leaving, because we don't have an airport here. We either have to go to Garden Hill or St. Trees to catch a plane. So what happens if it's too smoky? Like how do we planes can't land?
The province says it's put more resources on the ground to protect communities and infrastructure.
Have been making some progress there, though it has been a bit challenging just due to smoke conditions and some pretty intense fire activity there.
The decision to evacuate is not made lightly. It is made based on real-time assessments of risk, road access, smoke, and the medical needs of communities. And those decisions are made with local leadership.
Local leadership are trying to support evacuees at this command center in a Winnipeg hotel. Most Garden Hill residents are staying in hockey rinks and soccer complexes. This man is trying to find hotels for the most vulnerable.
All the dialysis people, all the elders are on that list, all the people with medical issues, asthma patients and the infants.
All told, 12,000 Manitobans have been forced from their homes in a wildfire season that has already burned more than 2% of the province's land. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, people in southern Ontario are dealing with hot and hazy conditions. A heat warning is in effect for most of that big region. And as Thomas Dagler reports, to make matters worse, smoke is now drifting south from wildfires in northern Ontario.
Canada's biggest city under a blanket of smoke, with Toronto facing poor air quality and extreme heat warnings. There's no letting up for those delivering meals on a bike.
Bro, there is a very difficult, there is too much heat, so wearing a mask.
It's a tough time to be sure for all outside workers, as experts urge anyone who can to reschedule outdoor events. The conditions especially dangerous for many.
The very young, the very old, pregnant women, people who are immunocompromised, people with asthma, people with other lung conditions. That ends up being a fairly broad swath of the population.
Devastating wildfires in northern Ontario are sending smoke thousands of kilometers away, with air quality plummeting for millions living in the south. A thick haze hung over Windsor, while tourists at Niagara Falls encountered a dark sky overhead. At one point, Toronto was listed as the city with the worst air quality in the world, behind only Baghdad. Even for those indoors, Environment Canada says to keep windows closed. Those out for an early stroll found out why in a hurry.
When we walked out this morning, it was really hot already, even though, it's super cloudy and the air quality, as you can see, it's quite bad.
It's obviously hazy. I feel the smoke in the back of my throat.
While the smoke is expected to lift Tuesday, the heat, sometimes feeling like 40 degrees, won't ease until later in the week.
Because the climate crisis is real, we know that the heat waves are starting earlier, lasting longer and more frequent.
Divyansh Singh is keeping his arms and mouth covered. This summer so far, he says, has been brutal.
This year, it's boom, man. It's so bad.
Out for another delivery, he's contending with the conditions as best he can. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
Time to go to the weather expert, Doris Badavi, with the Well, it's a countrywide smoke forecast to begin with.
That's right, and you can see all that smoke moving across the country. As we heard, a lot of smoke being kicked up by those fires in northern Ontario, also moving across from places like Manitoba, from the prairies, moving throughout eastern Canada. That, as you can see, results in some very thick smoke and haze. What we saw in that map, in that story, was the surface level smoke, which we'll look at for BC later in this forecast. But in the meantime, I wanted to show both the smoke and the haze because this shows upper elevation. You can see just how much that smoke particulate matter is moving through all the layers of the atmosphere in this graphic. If we zoom into BC, you can see a pretty similar situation where we have some of that smoke heading towards major population centers, including here in Vancouver, which, as we'll see when you look at the surface smoke map, is going to be very densely affected by smoke, especially once we get into tomorrow and then to a lesser extent Wednesday. Of course, local smoke also an issue up in the northeast as well as parts of the southeast because of more local fires there. But here in Vancouver, it's really those fires from the southern interior that are being carried, that smoke being carried to us tomorrow. I also want to talk about the drought situation quickly. Last week, the Fort Nelson Basin under level 5 drought conditions, the most extreme, exceptional drought conditions, dropped all the way down to level 2 today. Bit of good news, on last Thursday when this report came out, bit of good news there. Down in the south, though, we have seen some worsening. A big block of those basins in the southern interior seeing worsening drought conditions up to level 3. That is severe drought, and that is something to be keeping an eye on. Some parts of the southern interior did get some precipitation today, and much of the south did see lower temperatures, but not enough to probably see those drought conditions budge too much. We may see some of these basins come down a level or two because we saw a fair amount of precipitation, as we looked at earlier in the show, moving through some of those places, especially around the Kamloops area and the Kamloops Fire Center in particular. Here's a precipitation forecast for the next few days. A little bit of rain coming down the BC-Alberta border, some of it affecting the central interior, but not much. Temperatures are climbing over the next couple days in the south before they start to moderate a bit as we see a bit of a pattern change towards the end of this week. Here's that smoke forecast I promised, along with the conditions for tomorrow. You can see a much more brown map than this usually looks like, especially down here on the BC south coast. Other than that, mostly sunny tomorrow, a few very scattered showers in parts of the interior and on the coast. And here we go, Dan, 5-day forecast. Lots of sunshine over the next few days. Keep an eye out. 32 degrees inland tomorrow. Add another 5 for the humidex. Feeling like 37 for some inland areas of the lower mainland.
Okay, no kidding. And we are warned. Thanks very much, Darius.
Thank you.
A vibrant celebration of Indigenous culture, music, and community was on display in the weekend at the 3rd annual Squamish Nation Youth Powwow. Organizers say it's a great chance for First Nations youth to stay connected to their roots. Have a look.
This is a big thing in our community, and it's getting bigger every year, and I'm just so happy. I was a 60 scoop survivor, so I didn't grow up with this. And it's just marvelous to see how our people get together and enjoy life. You know, it's fantastic.
In the 60s, this was banned. This wasn't allowed to happen. We weren't allowed to come together. We weren't allowed to potlatch. We weren't allowed to ceremony. We weren't allowed to powwow. And now we're back, and now we want it to be bigger and better. We want everybody to understand it. It's a really proud feeling to know that the growth of powwow is really growing within our community, outside of community, and it's within our youth, instilling it into them at a young age. So when they're old enough, they'll know culture, they'll understand the language, and hopefully be fluent in all of it.
And I'm very honored to be here amongst you people.
My family was all singers and dancers and MCs, so it just comes natural when you start doing the actual ceremony. Master of Ceremonies itself, the different types of dances, the meanings of all those dances, and we try and explain that the best way that we can.
Everybody's allowed to come to powwow. We can celebrate our culture together. This rich history that wasn't allowed is allowed now, and let's practice it together.
A mentorship camp in the Kootenays aims to get more women into firefighting. You'll want to see this.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC inbox.
Did you hear? CBC Musical Nooners are back. Free concerts Wednesdays at noon at the CBC Outdoor Plaza. To see who's playing this week, head to cbc.ca/musicalnooners and experience culture and flavors from around the world at the Surrey Fusion Festival, July 19th and 20th. Make sure to stop by the CBC tent to play games and win prizes. Details at surreyfusionfestival.ca.
A firefighting mentorship camp in BC's Kootenay region aims to get more women into the field.
The camp is offering 3 days of training that includes wildfire fighting. The CBC's Corey Bullock has the story from Creston.
I grew up wanting to be a firefighter.
Paid on-call firefighter Jessica Mickelson says that her dream is now a reality, thanks in part to Camp Ignite.
It's such a great experience, and it really what thrilled me to do firefighting more and get more into it.
Mickelson attended Camp Ignite in Vancouver in 2021. 3 years ago, it was brought to the Kootenays, and she's been mentoring for the Creston-based camp ever since. Helping to inspire girls aged 15 to 18 to get fired up about the career, especially because it's such a male-dominated industry.
That's what we see in the TV shows, and that's what we read about. So the barrier is showing everybody that we can do it.
According to a 2022 census report from the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, just 11% of Canada's firefighters are women. And Kootenay Ignite Mentorship Society says that number is even lower in BC, closer to 4%. But Mickelson says it does require a lot of physical work and training to stay in shape for the job.
So I run a 5K every morning.
This year, there are 18 campers total. Each camper has to apply to be part of the program, and they get to work one-on-one with other women in the industry.
So that mentor follows them throughout the entire weekend and oversees and gives them the support and encouragement.
She says they learn all of the ins and outs of the job, from how to put on turnout gear to how to rappel down a building. There's even a wildfire component.
You know, they go back to their communities and they join their junior firefighter program, and they're like, I can do this.
And hopefully, she says, they have a little fun along the way. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Creston.
Awesome skills.
Very much so. 64 iconic provincial symbols, 5 weeks of voting, one winner. The search for BC's best symbol has begun.
And it is up to you to vote for which animals will advance. Justin McElroy breaks down the matchups for round one.
64 symbols of British Columbia, but only one can win. It's time for the first round of the search for BC's best symbol. There are 16 animals in the bracket, but only 8 will move on. The number 1 seed is the mighty orca, a championship contender, but will it spit out the raven with ease, or can the blackbird swoop down from the trees and make a massive upset? Elsewhere, it's a battle of big versus little, real versus mythical, Quaxi versus Mukmuk, as the massive Sasquatch takes on the Vancouver Island marmot. But there are so many other matchups to vote for today, including the Battle of the Bears, where the elusive spirit bear goes up against the fearsome black bear, and where the Grizzlies hope it's not an NBA game from the 1990s, looking to win against the brown bear. There's also 4 Pacific salmon looking for supremacy as Chinook faces off against pink and sockeye and coho match up. But it's up to you to go to cbc.ca/BC to decide which has a chance to be named British Columbia's best symbol.
And with voting still happening, an update on the in-progress races and some surprises even in round 1.
The mythical Sasquatch looks like it's on the ropes against the marmot, and it's a tight bird battle with the Stellar's Jay narrowly ahead of the bald eagle.
You can vote online at cbc.ca/bestsymbolbc, all one word, but you'll need to get your votes in before 9 p.m. Pacific tonight. And I have to mention, it is a BC symbol competition.
Yes.
So if the Stellar's Jay loses to the bald eagle, I can't influence the voting, but...
Well, you can vote.
Yeah, I can do that.
Just like
and
you.
I will be doing that.
There you go.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, YouTube, and our website.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. See you then.